Hey, hi, my name's Lindsay, and today we're gonna paint this desert sunset. I know I've been painting a lot of trees, so I thought we'd change it up today by doing a cactus. I really like this background, and I think I'm gonna change it up just a little bit to kind of pull out things that I liked more than others. What I'm talking about is, like the sky, I really like this yellow and how bright it is, but I wish I would have had it up a little bit higher. So I think I might do that in this one. And then the second thing that I'm gonna do is I didn't realize that my blue was gonna dry that dark. You can't really see the cactus, and that's kind of the big pole point to the whole painting. So what I wanna do is kind of lighten up the blue when I get in there too. So I'm gonna try to remember to do all of that. Before we get started, I wanna talk about supplies. I am using, as always, a large and a small brush. These are brushes that I use in my private parties. And so they've been used by a bunch of different people at a bunch of different skill levels. And so they're a little bit ratty, which is gonna work out well for this one here. These are sort of older brushes, I'm sure you can tell. So I have a big brush and a small brush. They're both flat. Doesn't really matter. I don't need anything super delicate for anything like this. I can use sort of the side of the brush when I get into those smaller pieces, and I'll show you how I'm gonna do that. But we've got the two brushes here. I've got a rag, it's real dirty. I use it anytime I pull the paintbrush out of the water. I'm gonna wanna dry off my paintbrush really well. There's gonna be a couple of times in here where we're gonna do sort of a dry brush feel, and so we're gonna wanna be able to really dry that brush out. So if you don't have a rag, a bunch of paper towels will do just fine. And then I've got my palette, or a paper plate if you wanna be non-fancy, but our palette here, and I'm always gonna use 5 colors. So I've got white and black for tints and shades. And then red, yellow, and blue are our primary colors, which is gonna help me make any of the colors that I really wanna do, especially today. It's a very sort of almost rainbowy feel that we've got going on. So I've got all of my colors that I'm gonna use today, and then I've also got an extra palette or a paper plate. I've got a few of them here, just in case I need it. I'm gonna be mixing a purpley-ish color, and then like I said, I wanna make that mountain range a little bit lighter. So I'm gonna be mixing a few things here. But we're gonna do a whole lot of fun blending on canvas, and a lot of little bits of kind of dry brushing to begin with. When I do this, I'm gonna use my big brush. We're gonna start on the background, and anytime I'm using really bright colors with kind of dark colors, I wanna start with the brightest colors because they're gonna go down the cleanest. So I've got my big brush. Oh, I may have forgotten to talk about my mason jar here. It's got fresh water in it. Anytime I start a new painting, I'm gonna start with fresh water, and then I've been asked when to change your water out, and the answer is kind of whenever you want to. So if it feels like it's changing the color of your paint, go ahead and change your water out. But for the most part, what'll happen is a lot of paint will get kind of stuck up in this little bit of brush where the metal is. So really make sure that you're cleaning out your brush before you clean out your water. Do both, whatever. All right, so when I do this, I wanna make sure that my horizon line, I'm gonna bring it up a little bit higher. Like I said, I wanted to have a little more yellow for this. So before I went about a hand's width up, this time I think I'm gonna like relax my hand and open it up, and I'm gonna make mine a little bit higher. If you want like a range, I'm gonna go just a little bit lower than halfway here. While I do this, I've got my big brush. I'm gonna get a whole bunch of yellow paint, and I'm gonna do this sort of quickly because I don't want the paint to dry too much. So I've got where I want my horizon line to be, nice long line there. And then this kind of swoops up a little bit. So I'm gonna swoop up. While I'm doing this, I'm not only thinking about where the yellow is, but I wanna make sure that I'm giving me enough room to make this sort of orangey transition. So you can see it in both sections here. And while I'm also remembering that yellow and purple make brown, so I don't want it to get up into this middle section very much. There's a lot to remember, but you just gotta, I've got a little strip here. You just gotta go for it, is what I was gonna say. So I've got this little strip here, and it sort of drifts up a little bit. And I'm gonna move up to this top spot here. I'm gonna do just a little bowed section, so I want it to kind of drift. I want this big purple section to just lift up and out. So I've got a bunch of paint. I'm throwing that on there really quickly, and then we're gonna make this sort of orangey transition. So I wanna make sure I don't have too much paint on my brush. I'm just gonna grab a little spot here and sort of wipe this off, but I'm not cleaning it out. I'm gonna make kind of an orange transition, which starts with yellow anyways. So I've got my dirty brush. We're gonna do what I call a dirty dip. Just the tip into the paint, because I don't need too much to start with. And so what I wanna do is sort of go right along this edge and just lay that paint down. And now I can kind of go into the yellow a little bit here, but I don't want to go too far. I don't want to lose all that yellow. And then go back up into the red. So what I'm looking for is this nice transition, and I don't want it to be super duper stark or go in kind of the same direction. So I might give it, yeah, I like that. I'm gonna give it a little bit of swoop there. When I'm blending colors, I'm gonna kind of go between pushing down really hard to really get those colors mixed in. And then to kind of blend it, I'm gonna go through with a really light hand and just kind of graze over where they go between. All right, a few more little strokes. And then I'm gonna do that thing that I always call noodling. Noodling is when you're done and you just keep working because you can. And when I'm pushing paint around, I could do this all day. But I don't want that yellow up top to dry, so I'm gonna move on up to there. Getting just a little bit of red paint. I'm gonna go right along that outskirts of my yellow, and then I'm gonna kind of blend that in a little. I decided to put a little bit of a wave into it. There we go. All right, so now I've got this real bright yellow that transitions into red. I want to make a purple color next for this middle section. And when I do that, I am going to use red, but I don't want that yellow in there. So I'm going to really wash this off. Spill water on the ground. Washing it off. I want to dry it out. And this is where I was talking about, I want to make sure that I don't have too much water up in this top section. So I'm going to take my paintbrush or my rag or paper towel and just give it a little squeeze right up by the middle. I need a couple of colors here. We're gonna use 3 colors. I'm gonna use a good amount of red, a good amount of blue, and then just a little bit of white because it's gonna be a really dark color. And when I'm mixing this, I wanna make more than I think I need so that I can always kind of come back to it and re-hit some spots if I want to. So I'm going in, I've got a big old glob of red, I've got a big old glob of blue, and then I'm gonna just from an edge here, I'm gonna grab just a little bit of white. So it's just like the corner there. Putting that down. So as I mix through this, I can always add a little more red or blue as I go through here. I might end up getting a little bit more white. Yeah. But like I was saying earlier, I can sit here and mix color all day and see I might have gone a little light, but I'm gonna stick with it. I'm also not worried about it mixing in all the way because purple is a real fun color. It can go between a warm and a cool purple. So if there's a bunch of blue in it, it'll be a little more along this way. And then if there's a bunch of red in it, this is kind of a more reddish purple, but try it out, see what you like. Once you find a color that you like, I'm gonna go ahead and block this whole section in, but when I go into it, I wanna leave just a little bit of space between that red and the purple. I'm gonna go ahead and start putting in a little more of a bit of a swoop to it, just to give it some more action here. I don't know how well you can see how much paint I've got, but I'm getting a good amount of paint on my brush and a little bit of pressure to get the paint down into those little nooks and crannies and stuff. All right, so I'm gonna go right up to the red. And now we're gonna blend. The red and the purple are gonna be kind of the same thing, but I wanna start with a cleaner brush because the purple is gonna go right up into the red really quickly. So cleaning my brush off again. I'm gonna give it a nice good dry off and I'm gonna go back into my red. So I wanna go from the red into the purple and then I wanna come back down into the red just a little bit, but I wanna keep in mind that I don't wanna go into that yellow orangey area. So I've got red. I'm gonna start right on that red because this part is so long. I'm gonna go all the way across this before I start going up into that purple. All right. I might have to blend that later. All right, back up into my purple, down into that red a little bit. I'm gonna bring some of that red in nice big swoops. And before I get too carried away and it goes too far down, I'm gonna go ahead and leave that for just a second. I'm gonna bounce up here and then I'm gonna come back down here and soften that edge. So I have a dirty brush that I'm gonna kind of clean off. I'm not gonna try to clean it off so bad this time because it's basically going into the same thing here, but I've got more red paint. I'm gonna go right along that edge, down into that purple, and then back up into the red just a little bit. And I like to pull those swoops out because that looks real pretty to me. All right, so now I've got my yellow, orange to red transition, and it sort of transitions into the purple really quickly. So what I want to do, I'm going to go back into the red, but I'm going to start with a clean brush when I do that. And I like a little bit of this purple kind of coming down pretty low, but there's a good section right here where I'm almost losing a lot of that red. So what I want to do is give it a nice quick blend without getting carried away. So I've got a really light hand and a little bit of red paint, and I'm just gonna go in these nice little sort of swooshing up to mix into that. There we go. All right, when in doubt, I'm gonna finger paint just this little section here. So I'm just gonna kind of, with a real light hand, drag back and forth. Starting to get a little crazy on me there, and I think the big brush is just gonna make me noodle all the way, so. All right. I'd like that. I'm gonna kind of wipe my brush off and do the same thing up top. I've got my brush, I've got some red. I'm gonna go right on where that red is starting to get kind of dirty and down. See, I'm gonna noodle so quickly. I'm gonna just finger paint that one little section there and call it good. So what's cool about the sky is it's a lot of different colors that are sort of mixing together. A little bit of brown is just sort of like, I don't know, rain clouds coming in. A lot of brown, I would maybe finish up no matter what I'm doing. If I think I've ruined my painting, I still wanna finish the painting. When you're done with it, and if you still don't like it, like maybe a few hours, maybe the next day, sleep on it. If you still don't like it after a little bit, you can always paint over it, and then it's just a regular white canvas. So I do that all the time. What I always like to tell myself is no matter whether I'm liking it or not, I'm gonna finish it and then see how I feel after that. Because a lot of times I'm too caught up into it and I'm too close to it, and I just need to back away and take a little bit of time, and then I feel a lot better about it. So I'm not done with the sky. What I want to do now is we've got just these little streaks of white running through everything. I want to take my big brush, and we're going to do that dry brush feel that I was talking about, but I really want to make sure my brush is clean. So I'm going to smash the brush down where the metal is sort of hitting the bottom of my cup, and I'm scrubbing it around. I always brush on either side here, the fat sides of the brush. And then again, I'm coming over and I'm gonna dry off my brush with my rag. All right, so I've dried it off really well, maybe a little more on my apron here. I wanna make sure these ends are nice and frayed. So I'm gonna fray these ends here, because what I wanna do is get just the smallest amount of white that my brush can muster here. And I'm gonna really lightly go across this in that same sort of upward motion. But a lot less white than I've used anything else. And that's gonna kind of mix into some of these. The big thing that I wanna do is I'm gonna start in the yellow and go up to the red, but not into the purple, maybe just a little bit. The big thing is not going from the purple down into the white, because you're gonna get these really dark brown streaks. So I've got my big brush. I'm gonna go just the tip, and then I'm gonna tap on my palette here just to make sure I don't have too much paint, because I think I do. There we go. So now you can see all of the bristles, but you can also tell that there's paint on there. And now I'm gonna kind of streak really lightly so it grabs some spots and leaves others. And I'm gonna go into the purple just a little bit here. And now I've got a dirty brush, so I've got to clean it out. There's a lot of cleaning today. And anytime I clean it out, it means it's super wet, so I need to dry it off so I get that same feel. And before this dries, I want to blend it just a little bit. So now I've just got a clean and dry brush, and I'm going to go over these a little bit. So if you get a really bright white streak, use a clean brush and just sort of fray it out a little more, and then you can drag over top. That's gonna help. So I really like this whole top half section. I'm gonna do the same thing to the bottom. I've got a clean large brush. I'm gonna do just the tip into the white, tap on my palette, starting from the yellow, and I'm gonna drag in that upward motion. There's not enough white on here. Let's try this again. So I'm gonna start in the orange because I think there's still a little bit of red on my brush. That's really bright, and I'll get to it in a second. I'm gonna go over that weird little spot that I don't like. And then I need to reload my brush. So you're noticing I wipe on my apron, which should really be wiping on my rag or on your paper towel. It just seems so far away when I'm in the middle of this. But I'm doing that so that I don't have too much paint, and I don't need to wash my brush out every time because I'm going really lightly across things. But when I do this blend, I am going to give it a little bit of a wash and dry it out. So I've gone over, I've got all that white in there that's a little bit bright. So with a clean and frayed off brush, I'm going to do the lightest little brush strokes I can muster here. And then I hold my breath, so while you're doing this, give yourself a second to take a nice deep breath. That's much better. All right. So I'm seeing just a little bit of a pattern. I've got like a white streak, streak, and streak. And it's not gonna matter too much because I'm gonna have a little mountain range over here, but for the sake of showing you how to kind of break up a pattern, if you have like, your hand just can't not do patterns. I do it a lot, I did it here. I'm just gonna take one more lap through and give just a few spots a little extra. And when you do this, make sure you're not giving a few spots that are the same spots throughout. So don't remake a new pattern. I'm just gonna make it a little bit heavier and bring it up a little higher right there. There we go. So all I did was take one more lap through. I added a little bit just to one spot. So where it was big white spot, big white spot, big white spot, it's kind of a little more feathered. All right, I'm gonna take a look back and take a nice little gander at it. It's really pretty. I like all these streaks. If I had a bunch of time, I would just go in here and have a whole bunch of fun with all these little white bits that are now clouds. You're welcome. And then I would maybe bring some yellow down and put some yellow streaks in. That'll really give you some really bright highlights. But for the sake of me moving on and not having this video being an hour and a half long, I'm gonna go into the mountain range. So there's two mountain ranges that we have here. I've got this background mountain range and sort of a closer up mountain range. The background mountain range, it's really just kind of mixing in with the yellow that's behind it. So if you wanted to pause and let the background dry and come back to it, absolutely go for it. But I'm just gonna move into it because I'm gonna use the fact that this is kind of wet still. And to do this mountain range, I wanna use my small brush, and then I'm just gonna use some blue paint and go through there because like I said, that yellow's not dry yet, so it's gonna mix in a little bit. All right, I've got my small brush, I've got blue paint. Where to do your mountains are always a big question. So what's easy is to make sort of triangles and then go over those triangles and make these little jittery bumps. When I say make triangles, don't make just like triangles that are sitting next to each other. What I want to do is sort of overlap them and make them look kind of staggered and uneven with a couple of plateaus. I really like this one's got that little bit of a plateau right there, so I might do that. I want to keep in mind that I did not want to take over all of that yellow, so I'm going to try to not take over all that yellow when I do this. Oh, I just went into the wrong color. Look at, bam, right there. I'm going to go back into my blue and get some fresh blue. And then we're going to start with triangles. So I like that that one's a little bit off center, and then it goes up kind of higher than everything. So I'm going to give that triangle there. There's one sort of next to it. And then there's that plateau, but I don't want it to be the same height as that. So I'm going to go out here and then down. And I like that little guy there. I just wish that it didn't take up all of that yellow. So I'm going to go over a little bit more and out. That's the only parts that I can see on here, but just to give me a little bit of wiggle room, I am going to bring it out a little bit farther. All I'm really trying to do is go right up to the bottom of that horizon line that we did. So I'm going to just kind of give myself short little triangles down there. So now I've got this very awkward, non-pattern-like edge. That is going to be my mountain range. So I can take a whole bunch of blue paint here. And what I'm going to do is set it on here and sort of let my hand get a little bit jittery. I call it honing in my Red Bull because I've had like 2 of them today. And as I go through, I just want to give it these little jitter marks or just jagged edges. I end up holding my breath for this too, so make sure you're breathing. And we're not going to be done with this. So what I want to do after I've gone through and given myself this actual mountain rangey line, I'm going to take this paint and just give myself a nice base coat through everything up to that horizon line. So everything over the yellow. When you're doing this, your mountain range is going to change a little bit. Like I just did that one little stroke right there. Done. All right. So now I've got my first set of mountain range. I'm just going to take it all the way off the edge there just so that I don't have any open canvas. And it's really dark. I don't want it to be that dark because it's way far in the back, atmospheric perspective and clouds and fog and all of that. So what I want to do is with my dirty brush, I'm going in and getting some white. I want to start on the tip of each of these and bring it down. So again, that's going to change your mountain range structure just a little bit, but go with it. So I'm going to kind of wipe this off and start fresh for every little mountain range top here. And then once I'm done with this, I'm going to blend this down. So what I'm trying to do is make it not dark, but I don't want it to be super duper white either. I've got this nice bright tops, and just with the paint that's here and on my brush already, I'm going to bring this down, going kind of back and forth. So now I've got this nice sort of background mountain structure. It's going to be lighter than our darker part here, so we need to make sure that it really stands out. And like I said with that first one, I wasn't super fond that it got really dark over by my cactus, so I'm going to make sure that this is lighter because I know I'm going to lighten up that mountain range, that second mountain range too. Close to being done with this. I really like all these little brush strokes. It kind of gives it the feel of the mountain range has got different peaks and valleys and stuff. So I'm going to do my artist lean where I lean back and take a good look at the whole thing. It's lighter up top, it's a little bit darker right there on the edge, but I made sure that it's not going to be that solid blue color because I decided earlier that that blue color is just too dark right out of the gate here. So this is that blue right on that edge. When I do these the next set of mountain ranges, I do want that top part to be pretty dark, but I want the rest of this to be a little bit lighter. So the way that I'm going to go about that is we're going to decide on our mountain range, and then we're going to mix a color and fill everything in below that and do a nice little gradient. I want to use just straight blue paint when I do this, and then we can do the same triangle technique to do our top mountain range or the mountain range in front. This time though, I want the edges to be up higher, and then it's gonna get a little more shallow right there in the middle so that our mountain range in the background kind of shows through. The cool thing about this is if there's anything in that mountain range that you don't like, this is the time to cover that up. I've got my small brush still, and I'm using blue paint, and then I want to take a look at this one here. And there's some things in this mountain range that I like, and then there's some that I don't. So I really like that this one, there's a peak here that you probably can't see it because it's too dark, that goes up before it goes down. And then I ended up covering it with the cactus. So I'm going to switch that over and put it over here. I am going to keep in mind I don't want to lose all of that yellow. And then I've also got an end where I need to make sure that I cover. So I want to make sure I cover at least this first 3-ish fingers worth of canvas on this side. I'm going to make sure it's a little bit higher than that first mountain that I did. So I'm going to bring it out here. Here's my triangle, and I'm going to go straight down. And then I'll bring it up and maybe cut through. So now I've got that little mountain range peeking through. Here's my other triangle. I'm gonna come down. I'm always trying to make sure that I don't have any open canvas between this first section and second section. I'm starting to see a pattern developing, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut that off. Go that way. Let's see, I'm gonna do a little hill because I like that little peak. And then it's gonna go up to our big grandy hill here. So like that. This other one on that one had that little bit of a cliff, so we'll do that. Okay, so you can see on the outsides they end, I'm gonna end this one a little bit higher, I think. They end higher than that first mountain range. There's no real patterns going on in here. I think the mountains get a little bit weird in here, but I know that it's gonna change a little bit when I do my little jaggedy lap that we're gonna do right now. I don't know why I ever set this down. I know I'm gonna need it. So I'm just gonna start from one end. I've got a good amount of paint, and I'm pushing down on my brush kind of hard. And then I'm gonna do just little jiggles. So I kind of move up and down with my fingers, and then I also kind of push harder in some spots and then loosen up. So it gives just a very uneven line. Try not to think about it too much. You're just sort of moving through here. There we go. Pattern avoided. Let's see. Once I've gone through this, what I want to do is quickly make a lighter blue color, and then I'm going to fill in everything below this mountain range. That little bit's just going to have to go. It's too steep of a decline there. So this is my new mountain range. I'm going to pull some of this big globs of paint down just a little bit here. And then I'm going to quickly make a lighter blue color. So what I'm going to try to go for is sort of a medium blue, so that it's not as dark as this straight blue, but it's also not this light as our end color there. Oh man. My brush is still really dirty. So I'm going to make sure this is nice and clean. And I'm going to get a big old scoop of blue. Maybe two, because I didn't really get a big glob there. There we go. Whole bunch of blue, and I'm going to start with a good scoop of white and see what I got here. It's kind of light. I'm going to go back in with just a little more blue and then call it good, because I'll start noodling if I let myself, and I really don't want that paint to dry. So I'm going to start right up on that edge, but not going up to it. So kind of where my paint left off. There we go. I blocked all that in, and then I'm going to quickly just run down this and cover the bottom section. I'm not super duper worried about this little very lowest section because we're gonna use some white and blend into that in just a second here. But before this dries too much, I wanna get a nice quick coat down here just so that it doesn't have a weird spot or a line when we go back into our white. But then I'm gonna go into my small brush. With my small brush, I wanna blend this edge here. So I don't really need any paint. I might use a little bit of water and just help me go into that. But all I'm trying to do, I'm gonna go back and forth with a little hand motion here. And I'm going up into that blue, up into the dark blue, we're working at both blues here, and down into that light blue. What I'm trying to do is keep that really top line sharp dark blue, but letting this move down into our lighter blue, just so that it's not a sharp, sharp line. As I'm going through here, it's a really, really quick transition, so I might actually grab a little bit of blue, the darker blue, and just help this move down. All right. I'm gonna get a little more blue here. I don't want to overdo it. What I'm gonna try to do is get the darker blue sort of right up to this line where they all kind of even out. And the reason that I'm doing that is so that when I start to put that white in, I'm gonna get a couple of layers here. So I've got right up front and then sort of a middle ground and then sort of in the back, and I like that. So this is a big spot here. I'm just gonna hit. Again, I wanna make sure that I've got these nice crossy motions. Almost to where I'm gonna go back to my big brush. And then with the big brush, I'm gonna start with white paint. I'm not gonna clean out my brush. It's got that light blue on it still. I'm just gonna make sure I don't have too much paint on there. All right, so I'm gonna get a good amount of white on my brush here. And I'm gonna go all the way across and blend up until I feel like I've got a nice transition. So super light. And I'm gonna go up and back into the white and then up. So I've got this. There we go. All right. So now I've got this mountain range. It starts at a nice dark blue. I'm just kind of going over it with a real light hand to help move those big globs around. I've got some really big globs of regular blue paint. All right. There we go. Yeah. I'm gonna do an artist lean and see how I like it. I like this a lot better than that. I mean, I do like that this is kind of dark, but I've got that nice sharp edge. And when I put my cactus in, I'm really gonna be able to see that cactus. So, I don't know, before I go in, I think I'm gonna put just a couple more clouds right over here. Just cause I think my sky now is darker than the original one that I've done. I have no real plan. I'm just deciding as I go. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add just a couple of clouds into my little bit of purple right here. So the next thing I'm gonna do though is decide on where my cactus is. So when I put my cactus in, I do want it to be over here. And I'm noticing that it's so dark right there. So I've got my clean and super dry big brush. I'm doing just the tip in the paintbrush or in the white paint, and I'm tapping on my plate. And I really want to make sure I don't have too much because there's no wet paint to kind of blend with. So I'm just gonna run right over it. It's got a good amount of white on there, so I'm just going to take a little bit of water and I'm going to go over that. I'm going to do it one more time and call it good because I'm already noodling, I can tell. Yeah. That'll do. I'm making foam on here, so I'm just gonna stop. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is use my small brush to do the cactus, but I'm also gonna use my small brush to do this little bit of brush here. Haha. All right, with my small brush, I've cleaned it out only on habit. We're gonna use black, and black's gonna go over any color that's on there before. So I've got my small brush, kind of dirty, I don't really care. And I'm gonna fray those bristles. I don't mind having a little bit of paint on here because what I'm gonna do is start from off of the canvas and flick upward. When I do that, I really wanna make sure that I start off the canvas and give it a nice good flick. I wanna point out the difference of going straight up all the time to giving it a little bit of just random curves. So I'm gonna go through here. I wanna make sure that I don't have a pattern, of course, but I'm also just gonna kinda go back and forth on this bottom edge. And do a couple of spots that are a little bit higher. Maybe a little bit there. I know my cactus is gonna go somewhere over here, so I'm gonna give myself a nice little bush that my cactus can sit in. All right, so now the white paint is kind of mixing into this, and I'm okay with that. I can take a second when I'm done doing the cactus and come back and then do an extra layer of black, and then it'll have a really nice contrast because the paint will be a little more dry. When I do the cactus, I'm gonna do this in kind of 3 phases. The first phase is just to go in and give me that nice stalk. So I'm just gonna give myself that big section, and then I'm gonna decide on where the limbs are gonna go. And that last lap is gonna be to make sure my limbs and my stalk all kind of look the same. So I'm gonna thicken out some spots. The big thing to remember here is it's sort of thin. It's maybe 2-ish fingers wide at its widest point, which is down at the bottom. And then as I'm going through, I'm gonna start out really skinny and then grow, because just like we've all learned in life, it's easier to grow than it is to try to bring it all back in. So I'm gonna use black paint, and I'm going in to decide where I want this to be. So there's a couple of things that I like about this little section that I don't want to cover up. I like this little bit here. So I'm gonna make sure I just kind of shift in just a little bit, and I'm gonna put my cactus right here. I've got black paint. I'm making just a straight skinny line, and I'm gonna bring the cactus all the way up about 3-ish fingers from the top of the canvas. Yeah, that's where it is over there. I'm not gonna worry about that rounded bit just yet. What I wanna do is kind of give myself a spot where it's gonna be. It's the height. And now I'm gonna thicken this out. So it's about 2-ish fingers wide at the bottom. And what I'm gonna try to do is give it just a gradual kind of decrease there, or taper. So it's a little bit skinnier at the top than it is at the bottom, but I don't want it to look like a point. All right, so the tops. What I'm gonna do with that is take my brush, and here's our top, right? So I'm gonna take my brush, I'm gonna set it down, going downward, and I'm gonna push up and twist. So that's gonna give me a nice rounded top. So right from one of the edges, pushing down pretty hard, and I'm twisting my brush. That gives me a nice round little top. I'm gonna show you 3 more times in just a second here. I have these 3 limbs, and I like that these 2 are higher than that one, so it's not a pattern going all the way down. So I really want to make sure that I get that in here. This first one is a little bit closer in because I want to make sure I have this second one that kind of comes in between it, and I put this really close to the edge here. So I'm going to bring this one in even farther than that first one. And then I'm going to thicken this out just a little bit. When I get to the top, setting my brush down kind of hard, and I'm going to give it a little twist there, back down. All right, so I've got one. The second one, I know where it's going to end. I want it to end somewhere up here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then just bring it down wherever it feels natural. I've got another top to this. Doing a little roundabout there. And going in. So these cactus have a lot of texture, and I don't know how coarse your brush is, but my brush is pretty coarse, and it's giving me these really cool texture lines, and it's also pulling some of that blue from behind it, which is nice because it's giving it a little bit of depth. So I'm not going to try too hard to blend out the blue, but I do want to make sure that I'm sort of covering that background. So any of those yellow pieces that are coming through, I'm just going to kind of go over them. I've got one more here, and it does go up over the horizon line or our places, and I don't want to cut that piece off. So I'm going to bring this one right here and bring it down farther than those first 2. I've got a nice rounded top. And then down. Let's see here. I'm just cleaning up that edge. And it's a little bit leany. It's leaning to my left a little bit, but I'm okay with that. This cactus here is pretty flat. If you wanted to spice it up a little bit, you could make a green color, like an olive green would be a whole bunch of yellow, a little bit of blue, some white, and then just like the smallest amount of black will give you kind of an olivey color. If you get brown, start over. What I want to do is give me just these little bits of highlight. So I'm going to do that same technique down in the grass. So I'm going to do that first so I can kind of work the kinks out there. I want to start with a, I'm going to say relatively clean brush. And then just like we did with our dry brush in the sky, I'm going to do sort of a dry brush on the cactus. So I frayed out the ends. I'm going just a little bit of paint right on the tip here. And then what I'm going to do is sort of give myself a little bit of a curve right at the top. And then as I go down, I'm going to wave through. So I called the mountain ranges sort of jittering. These are kind of a little bit of a wave or a sway, if you want to call, I don't know, technical terms. So I'm going to do that little bit of a wave or curve at the top, and I'm going to wave down. I went all the way down, even though I stopped being able to really see what I was doing, just so that I can kind of work the feel out, because even if I don't see it, it might be there when it dries. So I'm just going to keep it going here. I want to give it more than one line in some spots, but I'm not going to go any farther than halfway across the cactus here. So I've got that little bit of a curve at the top, and I'm going to do little sways. This might even have just a little bit of a highlight right on that bottom edge. So I'm working through here, and every time I reload my brush, I'm going to tap on my palette, and then I'm going to go in. I've got that little bit of a curve. I'm going to try to give myself some little sways. There we go. All right. I said I was going to start in the grass, and I was just too excited. I went into that. So when I do the grass, I'm going to do a couple little upwardy strokes in white just to give it a little extra highlight. All right. Do one last artist lean here. Give yourself a shot. I might do one extra little bit of white grass right in front of our cactus. That really puts him at home in our painting and not just smacked right on top of it. All right, so we blended some colors on canvas, we mixed some colors on our palette. You kind of watched me decide on how I'm gonna change paintings once I've already done it. When I do these, I usually do them on little thumbnails and stuff. I just kind of went for it on here and decided, hey, what the heck, we're gonna give it a try. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I had a good time painting this one. If you have any ideas or questions on what I should paint next, please let me know. You can either drop that in the comments, send me a message. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, find me there. If you really enjoyed it and would like to support me in doing these, doing more of these in the future, I would highly appreciate it. I do have a PayPal Me account. You can send me a tip of any donation. If you send me a donation of $10 or more though, I do have a coloring book. I was gonna get them printed, but with everything going on, that's not gonna happen. But I have a printable version. It's a PDF that I will send you a link to if you donate more than $10 or more. And I have these adorable little coloring pages. I've done cats and dogs as mermaids. And then there's a few other extra little guys in there. So if you enjoyed this and you like my silly little personality, you'll love my coloring book. If you want to see more of these, let me know. You can subscribe, like, comment, do all the things all the YouTube people tell you to do. And then if you like my coloring book, a donation of $10 or more to my PayPal Me, which is going to be down in the description, will get you a printable version. Thanks for joining me. I hope you come back next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to paint yet. Let me know what you think I should paint. And I'll see you there.